I went down the same pathway. I thought biomedical and functional was going to be everything, and then it turns out it is after getting after the nervous system. And so in those cases where it comes in, and page 1 is my kiddo is still struggling with all the PANDAS thing, is page 2 is I'm doing all the homeopathic, functional, biomedical interventions. What we do is we hit pause on page 2. We pull all the way back. So what does that actually look like? Welcome to the Experience Miracles podcast, where we help parents find hope, answers, and drug-free help to overcome your child's chronic health challenges. I'm your host, Dr. Tony Ebel, and I'll be sharing my experiences as both a dad and a doctor on every episode. I can take the latest science and neurology of healing and break it down in the most simple and relatable way possible. We'll take on the toughest topics and answer your biggest questions through interviews with other amazing parents and leading experts, leaving you with practical action steps that you can take to help your child heal and thrive. It's time to expect and experience miracles. Let's get started. All right, parents, if you are listening to this one right on the day it drops or shortly after it does, and we're still in this late spring to summer season, which again, if you're listening right out of the gates with this one, I really wanted to get it out a few weeks ago because we're going to talk about PANDAS today. We're going to talk about PANS today. To give you the full nerd name real quick: Pediatric, Autoimmune, Neuropsychiatric Disorders Associated with Streptococcal Infections. Now, that's why if you spell out the whole name, we're talking about everything here. We have to with this challenge that way too many kids are going through with way too many seemingly overnight, where did this come from? What the heck is going on? Multifaceted symptoms, because it's a multifaceted condition. We're talking about the nervous system and how this gets into the brain. Actually, what we'll be talking about with PANDAS and PANS is how it actually begins in the nervous system. And what most people are going to teach you is that these strep infections and these gut immune sort of disorders, which it absolutely is. We're going to be talking about the gut. We're going to be talking about the immune system and neuroinflammation and how that leaky gut, disrupted microbiome, neuroinflammatory cascade can then end up with these pathogens getting into the brain and wreaking havoc. But what you're really going to learn about this one, it was a brain-based, nervous system-based problem first. So if there was ever a condition that is the perfect storm personified, it's PANDAS and PANS. And again, I say here at the beginning, I really wanted to get this one out a few weeks ago because we always see our kids with the tics, the anxiety, all the challenges that come with PANDAS. We see them struggle most in spring and during these seasonal transitions, because what happens in spring and fall, it's not the only 2 times of the year that it happens, it just happens more, is we are asking our neuroimmune systems to do more work. The weather is changing, trees are blooming, stuff is happening. And so we talk about it a lot here on the podcast, that this neuro, gastro, immune, and actually if we were to ever get fully into the neuroscience, it's called the neuroendocrine immune supersystem as well. There's tons of crosstalk, coordination, orchestration between the nervous system, the gut, the immune system, and the endocrine system. And that is certainly a conversation we need to have to get into PANDAS. And it gets worse in the spring, and a little bit, it definitely gets worse in the fall or different other kind of transitional times of the year, because there's more stress on the body. So there's more stress on the nervous system and the immune system during those seasons. And if you parlay everything together, which we do, this is how we take care of our patients in practice. We don't scratch the surface. And that's why you need to listen to this one. If you've read 50 books on PANDAS, if you've gone to 50 conferences about PANDAS and read every blog and every Instagram and every podcast you've ever heard about PANDAS, and you've listened to it 3 times over, listen to this one 5 times over, because we're going to go deeper. Because I'm telling you, the traditional medical world doesn't even come close to properly diagnosing and figuring out what's going on with these kiddos. But the majority, not all, which means there's some incredible ones who really do see the picture all the way through, but the majority of biomedical, functional medicine, integrative medicine doctors and providers out there today, they actually get 1 or 2 layers below the surface with PANDAS, but they don't get all the way deep into its root cause and foundational neurological challenges. And then one more thing right out of the gates of the introduction to listen to this one is you need multiple different care. We never say the word treatment in the work we do because we're not talking about treatment. We're not talking about curing. We're talking about getting your child's neurophysiological function restored fully, optimally, entirely, because the healer is on the inside, because God designed our kids to be healthy. He didn't design them to go through these storms. He didn't design them to be overrun overnight with pandas and the tics and the anxiety and the dark thoughts and the depression and the terribleness that comes with it. He didn't design them to be on this roller coaster of one day they feel great and the next day they crash overnight. He didn't design them to be down these roads, but we do get down these roads. But what he designed us, what the nervous system can do is it can get out of this. What the neurogastroendocrine immune system can do is it can get off of this freaking PANDAS roller coaster as long as all of the healing interventions and all of the healing helpful know this inside out and in sequence practitioners and providers come onto our team. So I'm going to get very, very, very deep with this one and multifaceted. And I really do feel like if your kiddo is struggling, this might be a listen to twice over, 3 times over, because it's a tough, complex condition, okay? There is a lot going on with pandas, and it's not so easy to pin down and get cleared out, even when you know what's going on to the max. And so if you've only worked with functional medicine, integrated medicine, biomedical providers to this point, and right out of the gates, if you feel like, okay, we've flirted with the nervous system, we've talked about the nervous system, but we've talked about the brain in a sequence of gut-brain connection. We've talked about the brain in terms of these strep infections and inflammation getting into the body and causing brain inflammation. That part of the nervous system is a absolute part of the conversation I'm going to have with you today. But there's something in nearly every single, and goodness gracious, we have been blessed to serve hundreds of PANDAS cases. And then through our PX Docs network, we've trained our docs on these clinical protocols, the science we're about to break down, and the action steps that the science always leads us to for those clinical protocols, and truly incredible results. And there's thousands of cases of pandas who have had incredible results through the deep, multifaceted, must be done in combination with a specific sequence clinical protocols we're going to talk about today. So real quick, let me give you just my personal story into the conversation of how the combination of functional medicine, biomedical intervention, and neurologically focused chiropractic are going to be so helpful. So first off, obviously, I am a pediatric chiropractor. I am a trained chiropractor. DC, that's my doctorate. Those are my initials. Multiple postdoctorate certifications in pediatrics, in biomedical interventions, in things with autism, you name it. I've gone through a lot of school and a lot of education. And I want to introduce that to not say, oh, because my resume and my initials and my amount of student loan debt that I went through life with is so much. That's why you should listen to me. I am sharing that to actually kind of put it to the side. Education in the conversation of pandas is so helpful. You need to sit in those classes. You need to go through those PowerPoints. You need to be taught by people who know what they're talking about with pandas and pans. So with that, you can kind of already dismiss the conventional medical system. The average pediatrician, actually across the board, let's throw us all under the bus here. Research gets outdated fast, and when you're in practice, you awesomely are busy serving patients. So it's a really difficult thing to be able to keep up with cutting-edge neuroscience research and the latest understandings of any condition, let alone a lot of them. You have to be obsessed with being a lifelong learner. You have to be a practitioner who stays humble and hungry to be better at understanding what your patients are going through tomorrow than you are today, to understand that what you did 3 years ago or 10 years ago or 15 years ago or maybe 3 weeks ago is no longer the most effective intervention. So I'm sharing my educational pathway with you for just a second to say, I'm still there. There's not a week that goes by. I have all sorts of Google alerts. I am signed up for every email of every research publication. My Rolodex of people I text and email and go to conferences with are also stay hungry, learn every week nerds. I want you to know that what we're about to cover is not what people knew about pandas 10 years ago or even 3 years ago. We're talking about what we know about pandas today. And that is through my obsessive, relentless deep dive into the research, learning from other providers, not just chiropractors, but biomedical experts like Beth Lambert in the Documenting Hope organization, like Jessica Paulicki and our well-rooted functional medicine homies here locally who understand. If you listened all the way back, we did an episode about the dangers of antibiotics, and Jess got into PANDAS with me, and it's incredible. So we'll link that episode into this one as well, because that's one of my nerd besties and her whole team who knows this stuff inside out. So the continued pursuit of education is essential to getting results with PANDAS. But that's not all. The truth is, you need to be in practice, in the trenches, serving these kids still today, because these, like level 3 autism, like epilepsy, and like a few other things, and I don't like to rank pediatric conditions and struggles against each other. My heart breaks when my kids have a cold, right? Like, that's just the humanness of us. But if we're in this nerd space, like we like to do with the podcast, and we're really saying, okay, who's up against it at a heck of a level? It's our level 3 autism, it's our epilepsy, and it's our PANDAS families. Now, they're up against it because the struggles that come with PANDAS are awful. It is this deep emotional anxiety, depression. So the brain gets completely hijacked in terms of becoming emotionally dysregulated. The behavior, and it's really more emotions traditionally with this than necessarily behavior and going down those roads. And then there's motor tics, which just cause such a level of discomfort within the child's physical structure. Neck, jaw, eyes, all sorts of things can be affected into the neurosensory motor system. And we're going deep there. And then gut immune stuff. And obviously, it's there. I was going to say it starts there because that's what most biomedical conferences and practitioners will teach you, but it doesn't usually start with gut immune neuroinflammation cascade. It starts with nervous system dysfunction, disruption, and dysregulation, and then that limits the function of the gut and the immune system, and then the strep can overgrow, and all these things can happen, and now it comes back, and it hits the nervous system from another angle. So again, this is the epitome of the perfect storm. But you need to be in practice serving these kids in order to be able to really tell parents the truth about how deep this goes and how many different things we need to do in collaboration, combination, and a specific sequence and batting order to get results. And let me just say it right out of the gates, and for how long? Traditionally, to get a kiddo out of the PANDAS storm. And then where I like to look at things is not just like kind of sort of recovery. We make our content, we put forth our clinical protocols, we sit down knee to knee with parents, and we tell them the truth, even when the truth is tough to hear, that it's a roller coaster. If there's ever a condition that has a lot of ups and downs on the healing road to recovery, it's this one. And if there's ever a condition that has a long, sometimes many years road to recovery, it's this one. And what we see over the course of those years is we see progress. We see more good days than bad. We see more slack and stability being built into the nervous system. But to kind of go ahead and put the conclusion at the first 10 minutes intro of this one, it's a roller coaster. It's a long, winding road up and down with PANDAS, but there is tons of things we'll talk about to spot and identify, are we healing in the right direction? Is this working? Because the one thing I want to come out of the gates and say with PANDAS is you will have smooth sailing. You'll have clear periods. You'll be in a good place. And then the immune system will get, a virus will show up, a bacteria will show up, a weather change will show up, a stressful emotional day at school with friends or a class will show up, and then all of a sudden overnight, bam, you're right back. So for parents and for the kids, this hits teenagers a lot. This hits kids who are old enough to really make sense of this while also not being able to make sense of this. It can be absolutely disheartening to be making progress, to have good days, to have good weeks, to have good months, and then get hit. And the nature of PANDAS is it's very roller coastery, and they're pretty steep peaks and valleys. And so right out of the gates, I wanted to let you know, one of the signs that you're really healing is not just more smoothness, but less peaks and valleys. When there's a little bit of regression, when there's a flare up, Is it less volatile? Is it less severe? Is it less of a duration? Is it easier to get out of it? So I'm so obsessed about getting results for kids struggling with this really tough condition. And I've seen it's another story for another day. I've seen my own daughter. I know we talk a lot about on here about our Chiro Miracle Man, Oliver, birth trauma and that, and seizures and epilepsy, which was his path. But one of my daughters had a really, really, really tough toxic exposure at her kid's school. We live crazy healthy, crazy clean. We never would have done what the school ended up doing in terms of exposure for our kids. And it hit her nervous system big time. And it was massive sleep disruption. It was huge bouts of anxiety and emotional dysregulation and motor tics as well. So again, I don't really live in the world of diagnosis. And even with PANDAS, I think sometimes it's got, like every diagnosis out there, it's got a blessing and then it's got a little bit of a curse to it, where it's like sometimes you don't want to know what you know because you can kind of get hung up on that. So in our world, in our family, we knew what we were up against from how these chemicals that my daughter had been exposed to at school came in and hijacked her nervous system. Literally, you guys, this happened overnight for our daughter, where the anxiety, the motor tics, the torticollis just absolutely hit her nervous system all at once, because that's what chemicals can do. And the viruses and the bacteria and the strep, they can act like these neurotoxic chemicals, okay? On the inside, too much disrupted, that's what they do. And so I just want you to know one more thing in my personal buy-in to this conversation, why I feel strongly from my heart and my head that you're going to get more out of this episode about PANDAS than perhaps any other piece of content that is out there. And I know that's a lofty statement, and if you know me at all, I don't like stating things this way. I don't like talking about myself at all. I love serving your kids and families and getting amazing results. But there's a lot of information out there, and a lot of the traditional medical system, not even close to telling the truth about PANDAS and understanding what's going on and getting you the right testing and getting you the right intervention. Functional medicine, biomedical, which is exploding in our world, right? Our families of this generation are finally waking up to the medical cartel, just overrun of the system. I guess I just said cartel there. Sometimes on this podcast, I just say what I mean to say, like all the time. And so we are getting out of that system, but we're kind of getting caught in the middle a little bit, right? With functional medicine, biomedicine, and they go deeper than the pediatrician, the neurologist, and the immunologist in traditional hospitals, medical systems. But there is something deeper. So I think for a lot of you who have gone after PANDAS in a biomedical, functional, integrative approach, you're still up late at night going, we're literally doing everything. We've diet changed, we've detoxes, we've got into MTHFR. I know all about that, and I know all about COMP, and I know all about immunoglobulins, and I know all about IVIG and homeopathic and homotoxicology and everything else, and you're still on the roller coaster. I want you to know this really quick. I'm going to go as deep as I can into the functional biomedical understanding of PANDAS with this episode. And I can only go so deep into that world because I don't practice that way anymore. When I first got started, I got advanced certifications in pediatric chiropractic, so taking care of the nervous system, subluxation, nervous system dysregulation. And I went out and I got all sorts of additional training and certifications in biomedical. I was deep down the functional medicine, functional neurology world and roads before anybody hardly knew they existed. But remember a few minutes ago, I know this is a long intro to really set the table to this conversation, but every single just component of it matters before we get deeper into the science. I then got into practice, brought in all this biomedical, brought in the GI mapping, brought in the stool samples, brought in the hair samples, brought in the deep dive neuroinflammatory blood work, and we ran all this for our kiddos. And after about 3 years of doing that, what I figured out is, one, as a practitioner, I can't be world-class excellent for my patients at 15 different things. Who can? We've got to build this practice to be a master of one instead of a jack of all trades. And at the same time as I was feeling overwhelmed trying to keep up with being really, really, really high level at each of these interventions for our patients, God awesomely was bringing other practitioners in the functional medicine and in the biomedical world into my community and my county, like Jess, like Well-Rooted, that I could collaborate and connect with them on this. And then the third reason that I kind of unraveled my practice from being multi-integrated and functional medicine and functional neurology and just went all in 100x down on neurologically focused chiropractic is I saw the intervention that got the best results was the one that went deepest into the foundational root cause, and that's chiropractic. And I know if you're just catching this podcast for the first time, you might, on the surface, which is really our whole theme here, going way beyond the surface with pandas, on the surface with that statement, you might go, well, duh. Well, obviously, dude, you're a chiropractor. Of course you're going to say that's the end all be all. No, not of course. I don't care about what works to get your kid better, just that it does. That's it. I would literally do a podcast about you fill in the blank if through almost 20 years, really 20 plus if you include the education, the training, and most importantly, the clinical experience. The best doctors, the best providers you can ever get on your team don't just teach and read research. They serve, they care for patients because results we work for you. So if we don't get results, we don't do our job well, right? And that's the only thing we care about. So the final thing in my introduction is I'm going to go as deep into biomedical as I can, but there's something deeper. And that's what I figured out. The more I tried to do everything at once for our pandas, autism regression, epilepsy, and tough cases, the more we actually started to stall out results, the more we actually started to see more regression and flare-ups in a negative direction. So when I take you on this episode into some of the biomedical functional medicine conversations with pandas, I want you to know I'm not the world's greatest expert at this. I understand it big time with my nerd brain, my neurophysiological perspective, and I'm in practice serving tons of families who are getting incredible biomedical functional care. And I'm also in practice serving a lot of families who are getting surface level functional medicine, integrated medicine, and biomedical intervention. So if you ever see anybody on this podcast that is a functional medicine expert and an integrated medicine expert, I want you to know they are not a surface level expert. They are a deep, understand it, but most importantly, the people that come onto this podcast and that I learn from and that you get to learn from, they're in practice serving. That's our, what's the term for this? That's our rule. That's our table stakes. Like you don't get to be on, you don't get, we value and we trust our community so and just love you guys so much. No one's coming on here who is an outdated expert, and no one's coming on here just because they read research papers and then think they know what works. The way it really works is you've got to read the research, you need to understand the neuroscience, but then you need to be responsible for results in practice on the regular. That's where you get the title or whatever the heck I'm trying to say here of expert. And so this is probably the longest introduction, and I'm pretty known for long introductions and storytelling, weaving it into the neuroscience. But with pandas, this is a son of a gun. So when I go deep into biomedical interventions, I can only go so deep because I'm not still running a biomedical functional medicine clinic. So anything we fall short on here, so I know we have a lot of functional medicine rock stars who we've interviewed, and your audiences and your communities have come on. And if I go deep and then you go, there's more, that's what I'm saying. I know there's more, but we also, everybody who comes on and collaborates with us for care understands that in the pandas conversation, the gut and the immune system and the strep and the neuroinflammation conversation are not the deepest layer of this. There's actually something going many layers beneath the surface, and that's where we need to get to. So again, I've kind of mentioned it a few times, but if there is, and again, I never like to put two conditions next to each other because I don't even put two kids with the same quote-unquote condition and diagnosis next to each other. We personalize and individualize that care like crazy. But like I've shared on this podcast, I can't really do that here. I have to kind of put things together in aggregate, which makes my job on the podcast actually way tougher than when I'm doing a consult and a report and putting care in place for a singular individual kiddo where I can dive into their case all the way, dot the I's and cross the T's and then some. But when we go deep into this, if there's some similar conversations where it's multi-layers deep and there's something hidden in plain sight that is actually the original spark of the PANDAS issue, the similarities would be epilepsy and autism regression. There's always something more going on. Often there's something more going on than even the majority of functional medicine and biomedical experts know about, talk about, and ever get after and do something about as well. So that gap that exists in the traditional medical system, yeah, we're closing that gap. But if you felt like even as you go through with your functional medicine provider with PANDAS and your kid struggles and you're throwing all the supplements and all the diet changes and all the detoxes and all the natural biomedical interventions from the holistic crunchy granola kitchen sink at your kiddo, and they're still on the roller coaster and you still have the anxiety, the tics, the struggles, whatever it may be, or a combination of them, this is the conversation to go deeper and to get that sequence. So please know there is hope. There are more answers, and there is a deeper layer of getting your kid, your family off of this roller coaster. I will state this, which is why I wanted to go deep into my case history, if you will, with biomedical intervention. We need that. This is something that neurologically-focused chiropractic taps into and gets incredible changes and improvements with all on its own. And it's something that I never, ever, ever, nor does any of our practitioners in our clinic or in the network like to tackle on our own, because we're going to need the functional biomedical experts way beyond the surface, work in collaboration experts to get to this. So let's look there first. The functional medicine understanding of PANDAS and PANS is that this is a systems, multi-systems have gone offline. So what we kind of like to call systems biology look at things where the gut, brain, immune, inflammatory connection has really, really been disrupted. Pause there with me. Gut, brain, immune connection. Or some people may draw it out. You may have seen it visually put, gut, immune, inflammatory, brain connection. I can't draw for you right now. I'm doing a podcast, but that functional medicine approach that starts with gut dysbiosis, leaky gut, chronic infections, mitochondrial dysfunction, neuroinflammation, and these bad bacteria building up in the gut. Too many of the bad guys, not enough of the good guys. And doing this deep dive through functional testing into the gut and starting the conversation with the G word, the gut, is not as deep as we need to go. There's actually a brain, nervous system, then gut, then immune, then inflammation, then brain and nervous system again, sequence and perfect storm cycle at play with PANDAS. It starts with nervous system disruption and dysfunction, which then messes with gut function, which then messes with dysbiosis, microbiome, inflammatory cascades, and immune issues. So if you've got the GI map and the stool testing, and you know for sure your child has dysbiosis like crazy, candida overgrowth, parasites, and an inflammatory cascade, and all these inflammatory markers like CRP, ESR, ASO, oh, you name it, you've got gut dysbiosis, you've got parasites, you've got inflammation, you've done the OAT test and the mitochondrial, I'm going to speak in my Iowa language while dancing in between this Iowa farmer language, you got jacked up mitochondrial dysfunction, neurotransmitter byproducts are all out of whack, and the detox load, your child's detox. So I have a marathon running wife and a Cairo Miracle kid who just ran a 455 mile. These two Ebels, they love distance running like you wouldn't believe. Their mitochondrial function and aerobic capacity and anaerobic inability, all the above, are just through the roof. And I sprint from my truck to the house and I am winded. I like weightlifting and squatting and going for hikes. So what I'm getting at with this is you may test your child's energy capacity and they don't have any. You may test your child's detoxification capacity and they don't have any. So when you look at that, you go, oh my goodness, we have to change our entire lifestyle. We cannot even say the word toxin within 10 miles of our kiddo or they're going to crash. That's probably true. But what's really deeper than that? And is that really, let's just jump ahead for a second. Let's go all the way down through this, the mycotoxin, the mold testing, the food sensitivities, the IgG panels, and you're just finding all these inflammatory markers. And then maybe you go deep into the PANDAS-specific stuff like the Cunningham, the anti-neuronal pathways. You're learning all about biofilm, which again, our expert boss lady, Jess, really taught us really cool. I'll link that episode where Jess really nerded out about how you got to attack the biofilm so then you can get at things. I am so impressed by her work. There's not very many functional practitioners who dive as deep as that crew and others out. They're not only local here, but most don't, be honest. Just like chiropractors are very surface level, a lot of functional medicine providers are actually pretty surface level too. I'd like to say it differently, but it's just the work the world does, right? So you can do all that. You can do all that. You can do all that. But I want you to jump ahead with me for a second and go, okay, I don't want to use these words, but I want to use these words. Let's buy all that. Let's buy into all of that. Our kids got total mess. They got MTHFR, they got COMP, they literally have limited detox pathways, they got autoimmune challenges, they got food sensitivities. Are you supposed to live that way forever? Are you supposed to literally live in this absolute, oh my goodness, this is really, you know what, we got to do one of these at least. Anybody see, now I can't, is it called Biodome with Pauly Shore? Jeez. I have used some movie references on this podcast in the past that do not have a good percentage of you knowing them. And it really also, because they're not that good at movies and they weren't that popular of movies. And then that really kind of might make you question me as well. And yes, you're like, whoa, we were just talking gut microbiome, inflammatory markers like CRP. And now we're talking about a Pauly Shore movie. I don't think it was called Biodome, but anyways, this concept of, and I see families, so I'm coming back home here. I see families who have done all this functional medicine testing, and especially with pandas and autism and these sort of things. And it's all right. And it's all true. And two things. There's something deeper. There's something more going on that is really the reason of reasons why these tests are showing the way they are and why your child's neuro, gastro, inflammatory, endocrine function, mitochondrial included, are so disrupted. There's something more going on. And two, it's kind of good to know that something more is going on that can be taken care of, healed, and made better in its function. Because what kind of quality of life is it where we have to literally have the most restricted diet, never be able to handle any weather changes, seasonal changes, life changes, or toxins at all? I am not giving toxins and gluten and mold and parasites and full moons and whatever else you want to call it. I'm not going to give any of these stressors and toxins that come into our family's lives a get out of jail free card and go, they're no big deal, don't worry about them. No, they're a big deal. Let's better handle them. Let's take care of them. Let's get the nervous system, the gut, the immune system, our endocrine system, our mitochondrial function, and our detoxification pathways so dialed in, so incredibly restored, rebuilt, upgraded, and functioning at such a high freaking level that forward down the road for your family, you don't have to worry so dang much about every single full moon, about every single, food and birthday party, about everything that's in your house. Now, we, again, live clean. We go out, and when we're on vacation, we seek places that are clean to live in. And you name it, we're all about it. But just in this context of diving deep into the common functional labs and tests, even when that stuff all pops off and is there, what's the solution? To just live with this massive restriction and fear and anxiety, not only of the condition, but of these tiny little, yes, important, but triggers to it? So the interventions of diet, going gluten-free, dairy-free, low sugar, anti-inflammatory, adding supplements. The last couple of families I have talked to with pandas, they are taking between $1,500 and $3,000 a month in supplements. They have spent between $10,000 and $20,000 on testing. Some have spent $50,000 to $100,000 going out and doing different intensives around the nervous system stuff. And the truth is, their family is still struggling. So I'm the biggest fan of zinc, magnesium, omega-3s, B6, probiotics, NAC, glutathione, herbal antimicrobials, homotoxicology, detoxification, binders, zeolite, freaking Epsom salt baths, castor oil packs, liver and gallbladder support, colloidal silver, homeopathics, elderberry, IVIGs. When I actually battle secondary Lyme's, and when I say battle, I mean I smoke it. I take care of it because I know how to go deep and take care of myself, not just with living in restriction and fear, but living in proactive adaptability, resiliency. But every now and again, about once every couple of winters, I get my butt kicked and I go in and I get IV, IG, and NAD and all the different things that boost my system. And I love it, but I don't want to be dependent upon it. And I hope that as I'm really just doing this the way God called me to do, which is getting into how important and how real and how neurophysiological proven in the science and in clinical practice, having these conversations with this deep dive into functional integrative care and the testing that then leads to the interventions. And I love it and I use it and I want it within arm's reach of myself, my family, and all my patients. But I do not, I'll say it one more time because I think it will change your life. I do not want to become dependent upon it. I would like to get my patients, my own neurophysiological system. Lyme's is actually somewhat close in this kind of neurophysiological conversation to PANDAS, where I can have these flares and you can be on a roller coaster. So I know this actually even myself pretty darn well. And I want you to know that we take a different, and that's such a basic word, we take such a different approach to this than even our besties in the functional world. And really probably a better word than different is deeper, more collaborative, but really more complete and more proactive. We're a bit more all in to get deep into the nervous system, not get the nervous system just kind of, sort of, a little bit working better, but get that sucker working max freaking capacity. Because guess what the nervous system controls? The gut and the microbiome, inflammation, mitochondrial dysfunction, and the detoxification pathways. I'll say that one more time too. The central and autonomic nervous system need to be in perfect balance, regulation, and function in order for gut function, immune function, inflammation modulation, detoxification and elimination, and mitochondrial function, and absorption of good nutrients like the B vitamins, like the immunoglobulins and so forth that we want to get in, along with the elimination of the things we don't want out. All of those functions. So all of the testing that functional medicine does is actually more dependent upon nervous system function or dysfunction than it is lifestyle, diet, and those things. Okay? So the challenges that families face when they're going after PANDAS from... Again, I'm kind of skipping it for the, if your child is struggling with anxiety, motor tics, constant strep infections, constantly getting sick and living in this PANDAS world, you're not going to get any answers at the traditional pediatrician. And again, I always have to kind of describe that conventional, traditional. There's many holistic, incredible, naturopathic, and again, there's different providers. You could be seeing an MD who went out and got all this biomedical training and is an absolute boss. You could be seeing an NP. You could be seeing a naturopathic doctor. I don't care about their initials. I care, one, do they understand it at the full depth, including the part we're going to close down here with, that it actually starts with the perfect storm and nervous system dysfunction, sympathetic dominance, vagus nerve dysfunction, dysautonomia, dysregulation. Do they understand that? Because they need to then get that care, chiropractic adjustments, neurologically focused adjustments, started first for these kids with PANDAS to get to the deepest layer of dysfunction within the body. And second, do they actually serve kids and go deep into these pathways? Because what happens is, in the biomedical world, with autism, what's happening, and I've said it, and I'm going to say it one more time, what's happening is there's this eruption of practitioners who are now on Instagram purporting to be functional medicine and chronic disease pediatric experts. Many of them are, right? The ones that come on this podcast, they are. The ones that write articles and do summits and do webinars with us, they are, okay? The Jessicas, the Greers, the Dr. Allie Millers, and I should have started naming names because I don't want to leave anybody off that we've interviewed. It is incredible. So if they're on here, you trust them. They go deep. They know their stuff. They know the latest cutting edge research, but even more importantly, they're in clinical practice getting results with kids. That's the only way somebody gets on this platform, okay? Second is they absolutely know that without nervous system care as the foundational first continued intervention, everything else is going to be a roller coaster. And one of the other challenges, so in today's world, there's just a lot of and by the way, Same thing in chiropractic. There's a lot of posers in my profession. There's a lot of people who say they're pediatric and family experts. There's a lot of chiropractors who say they specialize in kids and the nervous system and subluxation, and then they're super surface level, okay? And that's not cool, and that's not good, and I wish that wasn't the case in chiropractic. I wish that wasn't the case in functional medicine. I wish that wasn't the case in traditional medicine. The surgeon who did Oliver's surgery, I'm really glad that they're world-class and the best of the best at what they do, okay? Every practitioner you get on your kid's team, and I'm just going to double down on its importance if your child is struggling with PANDAS and PANS, they need to be the best of the best of the best, and they need to see this clinical picture, the neuroscience, like we're covering on this episode. Like, they need to be someone who could teach this episode. Even our functional medicine providers who really know what they're doing with PANDAS, guess what the first thing they do when they take intake of a child struggling with this? Let's go all the way back and just read the word one more time. Pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorder. What's the first thing they do? Send them out to a neuro-focused chiropractor while beginning working on the basics of diet, gut health, supplements, detox, and immune, and mitochondrial support. But the real advanced providers, even if they're not chiropractors themselves, they know that we need to go slow in the functional biomedical world first in the initial stages of healing with supporting detoxification pathways and making big changes. If we try, and I've covered this episode, we'll put the link in here. If you try and detox your child and go deep, and by the way, this is not something a parent should know. This is what all providers need to know. And if you try and go deep, full send, all out, right out of the gates, with detox, binders, and getting into IVIGs and mitochondrial dysfunction and all these sort of just really heavy-hitting functional medicine, biomedical interventions for a child who is still severely struggling with nervous system dysregulation as a root foundational cause from their perfect storm case history, you'll make that kid worse, not better. And that's just what we saw in clinic when we did this work. If I didn't go slow at the start to go fast when the child's neurophysiological pathways were ready to heal at that rate, we would often see our kids at worst get worse, have regressions, have flare-ups, not good ones either. Sometimes there's a biomedical need to get neurophysiological need to go through some bumps in the beginning. I've covered that episode too. I'll have our team put it in there when regression is actually progression. But there's also times where regression is regression. And one of the biggest things you'll see with PANDAS is that if you go deep into the detoxification, mitochondrial functional interventions, without the nervous system foundationally having its function restored for at least usually 3 months, 90 to 100 days. And in the toughest cases, we will actually really encourage the family, the kids, and the other providers. And again, we really work in collaboration with this. We will really call the plays and kind of take the lead coordinator position on this and say, we're going to go real slow with the biomedical interventions for sometimes the first 6 months to allow the space, to allow the room for the neurologically focused chiropractic adjustments that are usually need to be done during that time at a high frequency, but a really light, low dose because of the sensitivity and dysregulation within these PANDAS kids systems. And the best clinical protocol, remember at every episode we get here, we round third base and we say, okay, now that we know all this and we understand this in a complete understanding and a deep understanding, and probably the word of the podcast forever forward is in a sequential, what matters most first understanding is we almost always need to do 90 days to 180 days, so 3 to 6 months of neurologically focused chiropractic at a high level, while doing functional biomedical intervention at a slow, nice and easy pace so as not to overwhelm an already overwhelmed system, so as not to throw further out of balance using good things. You ever heard the phrase, too much of a good thing? man, that applies in the work that we do here. Too much of a good thing can come real early, real often, and it's the number one clinical presentation I see. So and about 25% of our cases of what's called our intensive program are PANDAS. We have a high level of experience with PANDAS and PANDAS cases here locally within my practice and our brick and mortar practice in Chicagoland. And then we have about a quarter of our cases coming from out of state and out of country are in the PANDAS world. And if they already have taken this episode and these clinical, kind of this process in a very specific sequence and pacing and spacing, and they didn't know this, their providers didn't know this, and they're already taking 10, 20, 30 supplements, homeopathic interventions, all these other sort of things, we almost always need to sit down with those parents, get on Zoom or send our clinical reports to the providers who put these biomedical full send, full tilt interventions into this kid's life while their nervous system was still completely dysregulated and off course. And we need to say, hey, we need to hit pause on all that. We need to put that on the shelf. And so the last thing I really need to teach with this deep dive into PANDAS is if you're doing all the things in addition to neurologically focused chiropractic, one of the absolute hidden in plain sight cheat codes to incredible experience miracles results is often you need to hit pause on some of the biomedical, neuroinflammatory. This is going after inflammation. This is going at the gut dysbiosis. This is going at the parasites. This is going at the strep. This is going at the mitochondria. This is going at the food allergies and the environmental allergies. This is going at immunoglobulins and building that back up. This is going at the inflammatory markers. What I find all the time upon intake is that our kids with PANDAS are coming in and they've been on 20, 30, 40 different biomedical, functional, integrative interventions for a long time. And there's 3 scenarios that can happen clinically. 1, things can get worse. 2, nothing changes, plateaued, stuck, not really seeing progress at all. Or 3, it's working. In closing, if they're coming to us for care, already having done every one of those tests, right? The GI map, the O test, the mold test, clear, remediated the mode, the IgG and food sensitivity panels, the inflammatory markers, and the lab work and the PANDAS-specific labs, and having come to us, changed the entire diet, restrictive diet, 1 million supplements, all the detox binders, drainage support, castor oil packs, immune support, anti-inflammatory stuff, IVIG interventions, mitochondrial and brain support, CoQ10, theanine, you name it, if they're carnitine, if they're doing all those things and they show up on paperwork. So I can kind of paint this reality picture, which I know many of you have already painted this picture and you're like, this is us. But that's what I see in my paperwork all the time. Page 1 asks, what is your child struggling with? And in PANDAS, it's anxiety, deep dark thoughts, emotional dysregulation, motor tics, chronic illness, just a destroyed quality of life, especially during flares. That's what shows up first on their paperwork with our first page or 2. Then the second section of our paperwork asks, what testing have you done and what interventions have you done? And for the majority of our patients presenting to our neurologically focused chiropractic care clinic, all and then some of the biomedical functional interventions are already in play. And I think you can just see what I now see every single day in practice. If that second section and everything that's listed in there was going all the way fully deep into the real first foundational root cause of PANDAS, then all the stuff in the first section and the first page about how the child is still struggling with motor tics, anxiety, depression, and all these challenges, well, then that wouldn't be there, right? If all the interventions were really, truly, entirely getting to the root. And you know what? It works in the other direction too. Before you throw this out with the bathwater, throw the baby out with the bathwater and go, so I don't need all that? No, you probably do. In a specific sequence. So in those cases, generally what we do is we sit down knee to knee with parents, and it takes about as long as this podcast has taken, and we explain all this and we break it all the way down, and parents get it because they've been looking for that answer and that they've known without knowing the whole time, geez, we're doing everything, right? Quote unquote everything, and nothing's working. So that means there must be something else. Nervous system dysfunction, subluxation, and the conversation we have on this podcast all the time. That's the rootist root cause and trigger of the PANDAS storm and the roller coaster and the seemingly overnight quality of life crash that these kids. Every time I look back into a PANDAS case history, there's the perfect storm. High stress pregnancy, high stress fertility, birth trauma, forceps, vacuum, C-section, induction. Something triggered this storm in the nervous system first. The gut's not where it starts. Mold's not where it starts. Mitochondrial dysfunction isn't where it starts. MTHFR, which I have an episode coming out in a week or two all about MTHFR. MTHFR isn't where it starts. Nervous system dysfunction is where it starts. Then that wreaks havoc on the gut. Then that wreaks havoc on the detox pathways. Then that wreaks havoc on mitochondrial function and harmony. Then that wreaks havoc on immune system and inflammatory modulation. And the immune system can't regulate inflammation. It runs rampant. It runs wild. And so if every intervention you've had so far for your PANDAS kid is working on B and C and D, but E and F and G, the challenges are still there, you got to get all the way back to A. You got to get to A. And so I hope you can see with empathy, with relatability, with compassion, that in those cases, what we need to do first is just call timeout. So here's how this works. I said it earlier, but I want to come back to the solutions and come back to the care options and come back to what we've seen clinically and goodness gracious, does there need to be a whole lot more research around PANDAS? There's nothing really out there right now. You need to just be I shouldn't say there's nothing. You just need to be in practice serving these kids to know what works and what doesn't. And you need all the training. Thank God took me down. I went down the same pathway. I thought biomedical and functional was going to be everything. And then it turns out it is after getting after the nervous system. And so in those cases where it comes in, and page 1 is my kiddo is still struggling with all the PANDAS thing, is page 2 is I'm doing all the homeopathic, functional, biomedical interventions. What we do is we hit pause on page 2. We pull all the way back. So what does that actually look like? Let me give you the details. So here's how we take care of our cases. If that's how you would present, and there hasn't been this deep, intensive, because by the way, if you have chiropractic, it needs to be high level. It needs to be full out chiropractic. It can't be half-assed poser chiropractic. You can't have a poser functional medicine expert. You can't have a poser, inflammatory expert. You got to have a full expert on the nervous system as well. But what it looks like is probably hitting pause on about 80% of that and maintaining the basics, okay? So what do we keep? What are the basics? Most of these kids have absolute massive supplement overload, okay? Do a whole podcast on that as well. The nervous system on its own, which controls digestion, assimilation, absorption, and elimination, the nervous system is already overloaded. The nervous system is already overwhelmed. The nervous system is already dysregulated. And more good actually makes more bad. Way often. And so they're usually on supplement overload. And even though I can look at every line item of these supplements and these vitamins and these interventions and these homeopathics and all these other sort of things and go, well, that's good on paper. That's not good for your kid right now. It's overwhelming them and making them worse. Or at least it's in the way. It's the parking brake. And to get kids better, we need to release the parking brake. You know what that is? Usually pulling back about 60, 70, 80% of their supplements. Now, does that make me everybody's best friend at the biomedical supplements sales wheeling and dealing conferences? Nope, not at all. Okay. They're like, we like you. And then I get into the neuroscience of what's really going on. And they're like, get out of here. And I'm like, well, can't we work on this together? Because guess what's going to need to come back around? That. So we'll take our cases back to the basics. Absolutely, positively, we're going to keep them on probiotics and omega-3s and magnesium and zinc and give them the basics, give them the building blocks. But geez Louise, even actually you want to know a dead ringer? If all that advanced neuroimmune, neurogut stuff like the IVIG, you know what? If it's working, it's a sign that subluxation and nervous system dysregulation are there because those are outside in. I know they're not medication, but supplementation even rhymes with medication. It's an outside in, fill the gap for something the body can't do on its own intervention. We work vividly, markedly, entirely different as pediatric chiropractors, and we're going to make adjustments in restoration and rebuild nervous system function because the nervous system controls every other system of the body. So when you get the nervous system rocking again, it restores the majority of gut function, immune function, microbiome function, inflammatory regulation function, endocrine function, neurotransmitter balance, and mitochondrial function on its own. Never, ever doubt your child's ability to heal, especially when you tap fully foundationally into their nervous system. So for the majority of our cases, we get about 80 to 90% of our results without 80 to 90 supplements and biomedical interventions. But there is so many cases where this dysfunction, these toxins, these detox pathways got so jacked up, so dysregulated, that once we get momentum of 90 to 180 days of neurologically focused chiropractic, usually done at an intensive level, usually daily to start with, and 3 times a week would be the minimum that a kid needs to get adjusted to get results. There needs to be very specific techniques. I'll put in the show notes as well with our team the different kinds of chiropractic. You need to see an advanced, elite, world-class PX doctor to get results with PANDAS. Do not take your PANDAS kid to a regular, ordinary chiropractor or even a family pediatric-ish chiropractor. Take them to a nervous system-focused, inside scan, rock, and PX doctor, and that's how you're going to get results. And you do that for 90 days to 180 days, and then we can go heavier on the binders. Then we can get aggressive with the functional medicine interventions, and bam, 1 + 1 = 11. So I really hope I didn't lose anybody who is awesomely a functional medicine practitioner and expert yourself, or awesomely a parent who knows I'm going to need that too to get my kid all the way better, aren't I? You are, but in a specific sequence. So what you need is 1 to 2 trusted practitioners, not 4 to 5. Let me go in order. Let me go through my list. Here's the absolute batting order for getting results drug-free, neurologically focused, then natural functional integrated biomedical intervention. Here's the route. Here's the path. Start small and start with the basics and the foundation. Prioritize nervous system regulation first and foremost and fully. There's some insight scan things that we talk about on those other podcast episodes. We can actually track nervous system progress through HRV, through thermal scans, where we're really measuring the neuroinflammation, and through EMG. And there's a marker within our insight scans where we achieve what's called neurological stability. Once your child's nervous system, through the insight scans, if your child has PANDAS, it's hard to get to neurological stability, but it's absolutely possible with the right plan and the right adjustments. We get to neurological stability, bam, they're more resilient, they're more adaptable, they're more regulated. Now we can get the binders. Now we can get detox. Now we can ratchet up the noise with the biomedical intervention, and your child can heal deeper, heal more complete. So start with the basics: nervous system regulation, gut healing basics, and a clean diet, okay? I am not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We're just not going full court press with biomedical interventions to an already overwhelmed, dysregulated system. So when you add that all up, you need 1 to 2 providers that really know their stuff, not 4 to 5. Be really cautious with supplement overload. More is not always better. And know that the sequence, the basics, the simplicity often with PANDAS and PANS beat intensity, complexity, and overwhelm. Use HRV, sleep, and mood tracking to really gauge progress. You're looking for smoother seasons. You're looking for smoother transitions, just more calm, more regulation. And do not, final thing on the list here, do not hesitate to pull back if things regress or progress. When things regress, the truth is it often means to go back to the basics and do less, not more. And that's not going to feel normal. That's going to feel abnormal to say, oh, we're struggling. Let's add more. Let's add more. Let's add more. When your child is going through a regression or a plateau, sorry, I said progress before. When they're going through a regression or a plateau, the very best thing to do in the majority of cases is to pull back and reset and recalibrate with the basics. Functional biomedical integrated medicine is an essential, bold it, underlined it, please understand it, parents and practitioners, essential piece of the healing puzzle. It just generally, usually with PANDAS and all these neurological cases, isn't the thing to go deep into first. Our recommendation would be to go deep, head first, all in, into neurologically focused chiropractic for at least 3 to 6 months. Then you can get to neurological stability. They can have better adaptability, better regulation, better function to better handle the aggressiveness that these high-level biomedical intervention programs and protocols that most PANDAS kids do need to tap into will then get integrated, collaborated as we go. I want you to take at least a 1-year approach to getting your kiddo better. And if I really get to tell you the truth in the closing of this one, I want you to look at a 3-year journey of completely healing your child. If you take the time kind of frame on this and you shorten it up too much, and we expect too quick of healing, too smooth, and AKA not roller coaster of healing, it'll throw off our expectations. We will have misperceptions of what's, and again, oh my goodness, healing is possible, full and complete healing for your PANDAS kiddo, but we got to put it in the right sequence. We got to put it in the right time allotment, because if we don't put it in the right sequence and we don't give it the right time and the duration, it'll alter our decisions. It'll alter our actions, and then it will get in the way of full and complete healing. So we need to go in the right sequence. We need to go at it for a long time, 1, 2, 3 years, which allows us to go through multiple of these spring to fall transitional seasons, growth spurts, all these different things that often set PANDAS kids back. And you'll actually begin to see a few months into care, but especially 6 to 12 months and maybe some more time into care, you'll actually start to really, really, really know your child is healing and healed when they take on spring transitions and it's fine. When they take on a growth spurt and it's fine. When they take on a tough day or a tough season in life and it's fine. When they take on a virus or a bacteria and a fever and it's fine. That's how you will know, along with tracking this, most importantly through the insight scans and the functional testing, that's how you can actually see and know, KNOW, underline, bolded, that your kiddo is healing. All right, y'all, that was a beast. I don't have my time tracker on my video software and audio software right now to tell me how long I went, but I knew I needed to go at least about an hour, because PANDAS, like autism and some of the other tougher conditions out there, it's not quite something you can TED Talk. It's not something you can just really give parents and other providers the full picture in 15 to 20 minutes. That was a lot of science. That was a lot of heart. That was a lot of soul. That was a lot of clinical experience. Remember, I've got all the biomedical training, and then I did it all in practice. I got all the nervous system focused chiropractic training, and I do it all in practice. So none of this is coming from theory. None of this is coming because I researched it on the internet. Now I'm just going to regurgitate what the internet or AI told me and tell you that I'm an expert. We serve these patients with incredible experience and expect miracle results all day, every day in our practice. That's where this episode came from. Results, real life stories, real life cases. And when people say, oh, that's anecdotal, that's not real science. Yeah, tell me as Oliver's dad that there's not real science to his miracle. I can teach it to you. And for him being my son, I give no craps that it's an N of one and that it's a anecdote and a case study and a single child. That's all any of us are here to take care of. You're here listening to this podcast. You're jamming with our platform because your child, your family is your whole world. So drown out all the noise. And even if this episode hits you and you go, ugh, we went deep into B before A, don't sweat it. It's the most normal, natural thing. I did it with my whole clinic. I went deep into B. And I knew I had A, went all in on B, C, D, E, and all these other interventions, and had to come back and clean it back up to A. So I'm right there with you. I feel you. I couldn't have more empathy, more compassion, more relatability for you. I've seen this work with my own kids, let alone patients, right? My daughter went through a storm just like this in the PANDAS world, and we've seen incredible results. And there's no more anxiety. There's no more motor tics. There's no more of that struggle in her life. And so this is how we get results. I apologize that I talked that much into the neuroscience for that long, and I only used one, like 90s to 2000s movie reference. I don't think I even got a single dad joke in on this one. And I also apologize that Pauly Shore was the person that I ended up bringing in the episode, because I don't think he's necessarily known as an expert in anything as well. So, all right, y'all, I got to wrap this one up. Any questions you have, you send them. Go to the website. Great article all about PANDAS. You can go there, sign up for the newsletter. So go to pxdocs.com, go to our Instagram, go to our Facebook, engage there, send us questions there, give us comments there, whatever. Support at pxdocs.com if you have more questions, need more interventions, or want to share your story about PANDAS and about this topic. Whatever. If you're another practitioner, you're a provider who now knows, okay, there's something even beyond, as a functional provider, I think a lot of us are like, I've got it. This is the deepest it goes. And then you learn about the nervous system, dysregulation, vagus nerve dysfunction, and birth trauma, and you're like, whoa, there's more. So if you're a practitioner and you want to take some of our classes in our training, you don't have to be a chiropractor to go through that stuff. Reach out to us as well. And it takes all of us going this deep, drowning out all the noise to get these kids better. And man, they deserve it. It's a tough, complex roller coaster of a case. And so they need us to be at our best and at our fullest and work together at the best and most impactful collaboration out there, which is neurologically focused chiropractic, first and foundationally, and then real deep, real advanced, really experienced, cutting edge, functional, integrated medicine often needs to finish the job. That's how this works, and it works wonderfully. Over time, again and again, stay the course, stay the course. Your child can heal, will heal. God's got this, you got this, we got this.